Welcome to this deep dive for the Come Follow Him project. We have an incredibly unique stack of sources sitting on the table today.
We really do. Tons of translation notes, revision histories, lyric sheets. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a massive project. So they took a 3,000-year-old poem, specifically Psalm 29, and adapted it into a modern song for the August 17th through 23rd lesson block.
Right, the block titled The Lord is My Shepherd.
Exactly, which covers Psalms 1 and 2, 8, 19 through 33, 40, and 46. But instead of, just skimming all of those, this song sets Psalm 29 entirely alone.
Just that one chapter, all 11 verses.
Right, in the exact Hebrew order. And looking at the numbers from the craft notes, it's pretty wild. Every line is Psalm 29. They added exactly 3 short phrases, which we'll get into, and the phrase, the voice of the Lord, appears exactly 7 times, matching the Hebrew perfectly.
And they generated 13 different genre arrangements for this one song, but the lyrical constraints remained absolute across all of them.
Which brings us to our mission for today. We want to see what happens when you strip away the flat, comfortable translations we're used to and recover the raw, original Masoretic Hebrew text.
Because it really changes things.
It does. So the subtle question for you, the listener, as we go through this is, what does a 3,000-year-old poem actually teach you about the nature of the divine voice?
Well, I mean, that is a massive question. Because when you read a standard English translation of an ancient text, even something as beautifully written as the King James Version, you're essentially getting a domesticated version of the poetry.
Yeah, it's a lot like watching a classic movie that's been poorly dubbed into another language.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right, like you get the basic plot, you see the lips moving, you hear the dialogue, but the emotion is completely flattened out. The nuance just sort of gets lost in the dubbing booth.
It really does. Everything gets smoothed over.
But looking at these lyric sheets and the translation notes behind them, this adaptation is like, I don't know, suddenly finding the original uncompressed IMAX surround sound audio track that's been hidden for centuries.
Yeah, they went all the way back to the original Hebrew to recover those poetic devices and the ancient cultural references that standard translations just miss.
So let's look at the lyric sheet for verse 1, because you can immediately see how they're anchoring this. I'll just read the opening lines here. Give to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Give to the Lord the glory. Give to the Lord the glory, due his name. Worship in the splendor of holiness.
It starts with this grand, sweeping command.
It does. But the blueprint of the entire song is built on this very specific repetition. Like I mentioned, the phrase, the voice of the Lord, appears exactly 7 times.
And those 7 voices are not just thrown in there randomly either. No, the Hebrew naturally sorts those 7 occurrences into 2 very distinct buckets. And the songwriters cleverly translated that into the structure of a modern song.
Okay, so what's the first bucket?
The first bucket holds general declarations of God's power and majesty. So, the voice being over the waters or acting in power. In this musical adaptation, those broad declarations become the song's chorus.
Got it. And the second bucket?
The second bucket holds specific physical acts of destruction against nature, and those become the verses. So the literal form of the ancient psalm naturally acts as the structural form of the song.
That is so cool. Let's look at how that first bucket plays out in the chorus. The lyrics say, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord is over the great waters."
Right.
So it frames the concept of the divine thunder by heavily associating it with water imagery and the flood.
Which is super important. We have to connect this to the bigger picture of the ancient Near East to understand why that water imagery matters so much.
Because water was a big deal to them, right?
Oh, it was the ultimate symbol of chaos in the ancient world. If you look at the surrounding cultures, like the Canaanites, for example, their entire worldview was built around cosmic struggle.
Like gods fighting each other.
Exactly. Their storm god, Bel, literally has to go to war and violently defeat the sea god Yam just to establish order, just to prove he's in charge.
So it's this bloody, exhausting, mythological fight.
Right. In almost every other ancient myth from that region, gods must physically battle the sea.
And even in other biblical psalms, you'll sometimes see combat verbs used metaphorically. God breaking the heads of the dragons in the waters, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. But contrast that with Psalm 29. Look closely at the verbs in that chorus and in the Hebrew text it's based on.
Okay.
You will not find a single combat verb. None.
Wait, really?
Really. God does not fight the chaos waters in this poem. He simply sits over them. The absence of a battle is the entire theological point here.
Wow. So the supremacy is so absolute, so unquestioned, that there isn't even a struggle.
Exactly.
Okay, but hold on. I'm looking at the rest of this lyric sheet, and I am not buying the whole no battle thing just yet.
Fair enough. Why not?
Because if God is just sitting peacefully over the water, why does the rest of the song sound like a Michael Bay movie? I mean, when we hit verse 2, we get snapping trees, shaking deserts, breathing fire. That sounds exactly like a war zone to me.
It absolutely sounds like a war zone to a modern listener. But the ancient authors are not depicting a battle. They are making an imperial boast.
An imperial boast. Okay, unpack that.
It's a display of doing effortlessly what took ancient human empires, entire armies, and decades to accomplish. Let's look at the lyrics for verse 2, because this is where the translation notes get really brilliant.
Okay, I'll read verse 2. It says, "The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. He shatters the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon the white skip like a calf, and Syrian the armored like a young wild ox. Needs no axe, needs no chisel. The voice of the Lord quarries flames of fire."
So notice those added phrases you just read. Needs no axe and needs no chisel.
Right, those are two of the three phrases added to the whole song.
Yes. And this is where the departure from the King James Version is actually an act of deep fidelity to the ancient context.
How so?
Well, put yourself in the mind of someone living 3,000 years ago. In the ancient Near East, the absolute ultimate flex for a human emperor, whether it was Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria or Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, was felling the massive cedar trees of Lebanon and quarrying giant stones.
Ah, right, because harvesting those giant trees was essentially the ancient equivalent of a space program.
Exactly. It took the entire GDP and military force of an empire to pull it off. Those trees were incredibly dense, they were rot-resistant, and just massive.
You couldn't just send a couple of lumberjacks out there.
No, kings sent thousands of conscripted men on military expeditions just to drag this timber out of the mountains. Solomon's temple is a perfect example of this.
Right, the biblical account says it was built so completely of this imported cedar that not a single stone was visible inside.
Yes. And even in literature, Gilgamesh's greatest epic feat was entering the mythical cedar forest to take the wood.
So when the ancient listener hears that the voice of the Lord casually snaps the cedars of Lebanon, they feel the sheer scale of that shock.
They do. A mere voice is performing the ultimate imperial labor without picking up a single tool.
And a modern listener misses that cultural weight entirely. There's why the adaptation adds needs no axe and needs no chisel.
Exactly. The Hebrew text deliberately pairs a timber verb with a stone verb to demonstrate total mastery over the two greatest engineering materials of the ancient world.
So if you're listening to this today, it's like picture a modern construction site. Imagine watching a human crew spend 3 weeks using cranes and pulleys just to lift a massive steel I-beam.
Right.
Now imagine a superhero floating down and casually snapping that steel beam in half with 2 fingers. It is the ultimate toolless flex of authority.
That is the exact visual the poem wants you to have. And, this brings us to a fantastic word nerd moment from the translation notes that we absolutely have to talk about.
Oh, I love the word nerd moments. Let's hear it.
It centers around the Hebrew word chatsev, which shows up at the end of verse 2.
Yes. The line, "The voice of the Lord quarries flames of fire," which, in the King James Version, is translated as, "The voice of the Lord divideth the flames of fire."
Right. Which sounds poetic, but if you stop and think about it, it's pretty vague.
Yeah, what does it actually mean to divide fire? Like you're splitting a campfire in half.
Exactly. The Hebrew word chatsev is specifically a mason's verb. It means to hew or to quarry rock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, almost everywhere else this word is used in the biblical text, it refers strictly to cutting stone. Digging a cistern out of solid rock, or hewing a two into a cliff face.
That completely changes the visual.
Yeah.
It is not a magical laser beam dividing a flame. It is rugged. It's industrial.
Yes. In the cosmology of this poem, the sky itself, the firmament, is being treated as a solid rock face.
Like a giant stone dome.
Exactly, a stone dome. And when you strike solid stone with an iron tool, what do you get?
You get sparks.
You get sparks. The sky is the quarry, and the lightning is just the debris. It's the sparks flying off the divine chisel as the voice strikes the atmosphere.
That is incredible. The King James Version's word divideth really does lose all of that industrial metaphor. Restoring the word quarries brings that IMAX surround sound back online.
It really does.
And we also see them restoring the actual meanings of the mountain names in this verse, rather than just transliterating them like standard English Bibles do.
Right.
So Lebanon is translated as the white for its snow-capped peaks. And Syrian becomes the armored, because its glacial ice glitters like a breastplate.
And these massive, immovable mountains are dancing like a young wild ox.
Which is the accurate translation of the aurochs, right? An untamable beast.
Yes. The King James famously translated that animal as a unicorn.
A unicorn, which is a wildly different image than a massive horned wild ox shaking the earth.
Oh, entirely different. The scale just keeps building. You have thousand-year-old cedars shattering, fire being quarried out of the sky like sparks from a rock face, and armored mountains skipping like wild animals.
Okay, so that sets us up for the bridge of the song, which contains the final seventh voice. And I have to admit, reading the lyrics for the bridge, I hit a massive friction point.
Oh!
Yeah, I was genuinely confused. Let me read it. It says, "The voice of the Lord shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord makes the hinds calve and strips the forests bare. While in his temple, all cry glory to the Lord."
Okay, so what's the friction for you?
Well, we just got hit with 6 consecutive voices of pure, unadulterated demolition. Earthquakes, shattered trees, flying sparks.
Right.
And then the 7th voice acts as a midwife for a female deer. It makes the hinds calve.
Ah.
Those two things do not belong together. Why does a delicate, intimate moment of a deer giving birth belong right in the middle of an apocalyptic earthquake? Feels like the songwriter dropped a line from a completely different poem by accident.
It does feel like that, but that friction you are feeling is deliberate. It is the exact breakthrough the text wants the listener to have.
Really?
Yeah. Working out why those two completely opposed images belong together is the climax of the entire song.
Okay, walk me through it.
The ancient authors are forcing you to realize that the exact same voice that violently destroys thousand-year-old cedars, the voice that shakes the armored mountains, is the very same voice that gently opens a womb and creates new life.
Oh, wow.
Demolition and birth are flowing from the exact same source.
That dual nature, terrifying power, combined with tender, intimate creation, that is what triggers the massive response in the next line.
Exactly. The scene shifts immediately. The text pivots to a temple full of people shouting, "Glory!"
Oh, and remember the very first line of the song. The command was, "Give to the Lord the glory." And here at the bridge we get the answer. Glory to the Lord.
Command issued, command obeyed. The words are simply inverted.
But there is a crucial translation detail here regarding when this temple is shouting glory.
Yes, this is huge.
Because the King James Version says, "And in his temple doth everyone speak of his glory," which makes it sound sequential.
Right, like first the terrifying storm passes, the danger is over, everybody uncovers their ears, and then they all go to the temple to say thank you.
But the Masoretic Hebrew paints a very different picture, doesn't it?
It does. It uses a circumstantial clause, which means it shouldn't be translated as "and," it should be translated as "while."
While in his temple, all cry glory.
Yes. The worshippers are not cheering after the storm passes. They are shouting glory throughout the terrifying chaos.
That is so powerful.
There are two scenes happening at exactly the same time. Outside, the voice is snapping cedars, convulsing the wilderness, and quarrying fire. Inside, the temple is echoing with worship.
The worship is never interrupted by the storm.
No, it is fueled by it.
Which explains why the song moves straight into the pre-chorus without skipping a beat. The tension doesn't just fade away, it resolves into a profound theological statement.
And the pre-chorus falls deliberately after this bridge.
Let me read it. It says, "The Lord sits enthroned above the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever."
So the specific Hebrew word used for the flood here is mabul, and that vocabulary is crucial.
Mabul.
Yeah, mabul is not just a generic ancient word for a heavy rainstorm or a swollen river. It is the specific, highly charged Hebrew word reserved exclusively for the Genesis deluge, Noah's flood.
The ultimate uncreation of the world.
Exactly. In the entire Hebrew Bible, you will not find the word mabul anywhere outside of Genesis chapters 6 through 11, except for right here in Psalm 29.
So by using mabul, the poem is pulling on the deepest cultural memory of total chaos, destruction, and the unmaking of reality.
Yes, God took his throne above the mabul, the ultimate chaos. The lyrics lock verses 10 and 11 together to preserve a direct causal link here.
A causal link.
Yeah, he is enthroned above the chaos, therefore he blesses his people with peace. The enthronement above the storm is the direct cause of the peace given to the people inside the temple.
That makes so much sense. And then we hit the final chorus, which repeats that same imagery of the Lord over the waters. But it just hits completely differently now that we understand the storm is bringing life. not just destruction.
It completely shifts the tone.
And looking at the entire 11 verses of this psalm, there is something glaringly missing that I noticed. There is no first-person pronoun anywhere in the text.
None. No I, no me, no my.
The writer never inserts themselves into the chaos. The listener's only way into the song is the very last line, which brings us to the outro.
And the outro is the ultimate payoff of this entire project.
It really is. The lyrics finish with, "The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with shalom."
Shalom is the only untranslated word in the entire musical adaptation.
Right, because everywhere else, the project took the time to translate names like Lebanon and Syrian into English to give us the literal meaning. So leaving shalom in Hebrew is a massive spotlight. Because as a modern listener, when you hear the English word peace, you probably just picture a quiet room, an absence of conflict, or maybe a day at the spa.
Right, like the storm stopped, so we finally have peace.
Exactly. But the song refuses to give you that definition on a silver platter.
Because the English word peace has been so flattened out, the Hebrew word shalom carries so much more architectural weight.
What does it actually mean?
It means wholeness. It means welfare, completeness, and soundness. It is not just the absence of bad things happening, it is the active presence of absolute good and structural integrity.
Wow. So by forcing you to hear that swap from peace to shalom, the text teaches this profound lesson. It makes you realize that mere quiet was never the goal of the divine voice.
No, not at all.
Wholeness, shalom, was the purpose of the entire storm all along. The voice did not shatter the giant cedars just to make a mess. It shattered them to make room for wholeness.
That's beautifully said. When you realize the storm isn't a chaotic battle against a sea god, but rather a masterful restructuring of reality, meant to bring about new birth and completeness. I mean, it reframes everything you just listened to.
It's such a stark reminder of why we cannot settle for the dubbed movie version of ancient texts, or really of knowledge in any field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when things get smoothed over by time, by translation, or just by the sheer convenience of a simple summary, we lose the spark. We lose the heavy chisel hitting the solid rock face. We lose the IMAX surround sound.
You lose the friction that makes it meaningful.
Right. There's always more beneath the surface if you're willing to dig into the original sources.
It changes how you interact with the information and honestly how you view the storms in your own periphery.
It absolutely does. And that leaves us with something pretty profound to think about. If true shalom, that deep wholeness, soundness, and completeness, can only be reached by going through the terrifying storm, by the metaphorical breaking of the massive, immovable cedars of Lebanon, what immovable cedars in our own modern, everyday lives need to be shattered by that voice before we can find our own true wholeness?
On just the question.
It is. So keep asking questions, keep looking past the dub dialogue, and we will see you next time on The Deep Dive.